You're locked into Back to BasSTriX podcast. Check out the live show from 8 till 10 every Friday on BasSTriX.co.uk. For more information, check out backtobastrix.webs.com.
Hi there, I'm Ricky G and welcome to the Back to BasSTriX podcast. Mobile phones aid the blind in many ways now through advancements in technology. There are four main operating systems which now rule the market: Symbian, Windows Mobile, Android and the iPhone. The iPhone seems to be taking most of the customers away from Android only because its settings are already pre-installed on there. So for all you guys who are blind or visually impaired looking for a new phone, check out the iPhone if you're willing to spend the extra cash. We'll also be speaking to Ferran Colegio Santiago later, and he's the Chief Technical Officer of Code Factory. Code Factory make three of the big four, and they are Symbian, Windows Mobile and Android. So stick around. But first of all, we'll be speaking to Gary, who works at the R&IB in London. So Gary, how do you think phones have aided the blind since their existence?
I think I know when I first started getting into this field, which is in the mid-90s, one of the problems that people had was doing things like finding a phone box, something that basic. You know, you're in a place you don't know, you need to phone somebody, you need to find a phone box, and that's very difficult. So I think as soon as mobile phones came out, certainly blind people and people with low vision found the prospect exciting. The problem was getting ones that would talk or that would work properly. And I haven't been that involved with phones that much until the iPhone 3GS came out in 2009, but I know that there's been a huge uptake of Apple products, notably phones, since then, because they've got magnification and speech built in, and people find them brilliant. And of course now you've also got things like Talks and Mobile Speak for Symbian phones that have been around before the iPhone. And then the session today is showing the latest one for Android, which is another kind of step forward, really.
You actually raised a good point there, that people seem to be mentioning the iPhone is actually quite good. With like Symbian and Windows Mobile and Android, they seem to have to install all these features at the start, as opposed to the iPhone, it's already ready and built in.
I think, Apple are the first company that have actually embedded the accessibility into it. There's various ideas about why they did this. One idea is that they just care about their customers and they've done it for that reason. There is a more cynical view that there are business reasons for doing it, but basically the bottom line is, they're the first company that have done it, and it has had a big impact, and that's why they're so popular. They are expensive phones because they can do a lot of things, and so some people who just need a basic phone for making telephone calls on might not want to spend the amount of money that an iPhone costs, but once you've got one, they allow you to do a lot more than just make phone calls. I'd say as well, another thing is that I know a lot of people fear the idea of a touchscreen. But in my experience from demonstrating Apple products, and I was at Site Village, for instance, last year with an iPhone, allowing people to play around with it, and I was surprised how quickly people could get used to the idea of a screen that is completely flat, but just moving around it, they can actually find their way around and get used to some of the gestures like swiping, flicking between things, and they found it very easy to get on with.
Back to BasSTriX.
Thank you very much for that, Gary. That was amazing. Next up, we were speaking to Joshua. He's 13 years old. So, Joshua, how do phones aid your day-to-day activities?
I think I use them all the time. Well, all the time. You know, with all this new technology, you know, it's just always happening. You know, like with all the time a new app on the market, all the time a new idea for software. I think they're used. You know, I use mine every day for practically everything when it comes to from emailing to Facebooking to text messaging, you know, everything.
Do you think they've developed a lot more since the millennium?
Yes, I think in the last 5 to 10 years, I think there's been a big step forward in how they've developed. Particularly sort of after 2000, maybe 2006, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, because you know, when the first iPhones, you know, they really certainly seems to be having a big, you know, effect, and it's very popular with everyone. I think Apple have made a very big name for themselves, what with creating maps, you know, the desktop computers, to making iPods, to iPhones. You know, I think Apple have made a very big name for themselves and have, you know, made themselves known to everyone.
Do you think phones are going to get a lot better in the future, or do they have a lot of places where they could be built upon?
I think that how it's happening at the moment, I think they can get better, and I think they will get better.
Cheers for that, Josh. That was amazing, man. I think phones actually are actually helping blind people a lot these days. It seems to be that they can use their GPS, they can get around, they can play tunes, they can even play games, even on touch screens. I mean, touchscreen, that must have been a big leap at some point to get used to swiping your finger across a smooth pad compared to buttons. I mean, that is a big difference to anybody. But next up, we're speaking to the Chief Technical Officer of Code Factory. His name's Ferran Galeo Santiago, and he's going to give us a few information about what he does. So, Ferran, how well have phone operating systems developed since the millennium?
If you start with Symbian and Windows Mobile, which are the first platforms that have been made accessible, to do a screen reader for Windows Mobile or Symbian, I used to work for Windows Mobile until a year ago, more or less. It's kind of making a virus, okay? You have to make a software that comes in a very deep, a very low level into the system and keeps watching what's going on and speaks to the user. It is possible because the security on that operating system was not too high. So you can develop some apps that can be hooking the touch stuff and keys, and you can give an alternative interface for blind users. Now new operating systems are far more secure, so you cannot do this, and you need to have an accessibility API. So the system gives you the tools that you need in order to create the accessibility for this phone. But when the accessibility coming with the operating system is not enough, you cannot go to the low level and try to get this information by any other way. So before, accessibility was very hard to do because it was a very hard development task. But it was almost always a way to get the information that you wanted from the screen to make it to be spoken.
Especially like with the difference between touch screen and buttons.
Yes, this is another thing on the same line, because if you want to give an alternative UI for a touch screen, you need to. A phone is designed in a way that when you touch the screen, things will happen when you touch. But when a blind person uses a phone, he or she needs to first touch, know who is touching, what's touching, and then decide if they want to type to tap there. You depend on that accessibility API. Things are moving, and things are moving well. You have the perfect scenario, which is the iPhone. Yeah. They have all accessible out of the box.
What would you say the best operating system is?
Best operating system. It's a matter of tasks, I think. At this point, phone better operating systems are Android and iPhone, and it's the trend. The best one, I prefer Android, maybe because I'm developing for Android and I know more about Android. You have also now Windows Phone 7 from Microsoft, which is kind of appearing there, and they made a deal with Nokia. So Nokia phones will come with Windows Phone 7, but it's still it's soon to say how far will arrive this operating system. At this point, Android and iPhone are the best.
Back to BasSTriX.
Yes, I'm Ricky G, and this is the Back to BasSTriX podcast. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and there's going to be a new one upcoming soon. Don't forget to check out www.backtobasstrix.webs.com if you're not listening to this on there. And I hope you enjoyed my YouTube account. Stay tuned and let the good times roll.
You're locked into Back to BasSTriX podcast. Check out the live show from 8 till 10 every Friday on BasSTriX.co.uk. For more information, check out backtobasstrix.webs.com. Back to BasSTriX.